The most amazing thing about Silkie chickens is the fact they can all stay together. This was such a huge issue for me with the large chickens, as Chris has mentioned, getting into fights, picking on each other, picking on each other's babies. It was horrible. But you can see here in this group, there is 5 generations in here, 5 different age groups, all born at different times this year, and they're just fine. Just fine. And we've got some little baby ones. They're going to be released here soon too, and all of these birds are still going to get along with those birds, and we're going to talk about that.
Well, it's been a while since we've done a video talking about chickens, so today we actually figured this was a prime opportunity to talk about probably the Silkie's #1 most famous attribute, and that's broodiness and looking after chicks. So Silkies are not exactly a breed of chicken that comes to most people's mind when they think, hey, I want to start a homestead and raise my own food. Almost nobody thinks of raising Silkies for that. But we've made the switch to Silkies, and to be honest, there's a lot of good reasons for it. They are really good foragers, they're very docile and easy to handle. They actually, contrary to sort of popular belief, do actually handle the elements fairly well with fairly modest accommodations. But there's definitely one thing above all of those for us that shines as the absolute best thing about Silkies. So 2024 kind of got away from us and we didn't produce a lot of video content, and we're now into November, and this seems like an odd time to talk about broodiness in chickens, but we've still got chickens raising chicks. And one of the most interesting things that we found about the Silkies, this is probably where having that sort of reputation as being exceptional broodies is 100% deserved, but the little subcategory of that is they're really easy to work with as broody birds. And I think that in itself is sort of a not discussed attribute, but we're going to show you a little bit of this as we go through this video. Anything you read on the internet or anything you watch on YouTube is going to tell you what I just said, is Silkies are amazing broody birds. They love to sit on eggs. They love to look after babies. This is no surprise whatsoever, but I think there is a little tidbit that you don't read as often. That behavior extends far beyond sort of eggs and little chicks. The #1 sort of best thing about Silkies is they love babies and love to raise babies, and everybody gets along amazingly. So we've raised chickens for a long time, and prior to Silkies, for anybody who's just sort of finding this video, we used to raise sort of standard size partridge chanticleers, which I would say in a lot of respects are pretty representative of a normal, what you think of chicken for size and raising and all that sort of thing. But the Silkies are interesting because well beyond just loving to sit and loving to look after little chicks, Silkies get along amazingly, and you can keep multiple generations, multiple sizes together, and we've been finding there's no issues. And that's one thing with the larger chickens. We definitely found that a broody hen was pretty mean both to other hens but also to other chicks, and very possessive. The Silkies love babies, and it's not just the hen who's broody. They all love babies. We've not had any issue with sort of pecking order or hens killing other hens' chicks or any of those things that you often think about. And the one thing with that is it makes managing them and just keeping them a lot easier, because we don't need that exponential creep of coops and what have you to raise a lot of Silkies.
This group here, we have 4 groups on the farm, but this group here just demonstrates so well how good these birds do with such a variety of ages. I wish I could find, oh, there's the little chick over here, see? He's down there working in there. He was a little oddball, born at a weird time. Mom just decided to sit and we let her do it. And we've got some more little ones that are going to be out here shortly.
From a management perspective, the Silkies are far superior in my mind, because you can allow those chicks to be integrated into the flock, and it makes management a lot easier because you can basically you don't need a million coops to grow out those birds, and they do really well with the different age classes. Now, like any chicken, when you get to the point that those roosters start getting to maturity, there's a little bit of squabbling, but it's nothing compared to bigger fowl from our experience. So of course, like anything in homesteading or raising animals, nothing is perfect here. We're going to show you right now, one thing that we do is we do separate the hens when they're broody, and there's a bunch of reasons for that. So we always kind of reintegrate them back into the flock with their chicks. And we have 2 hens right now from different groups that we have around the barnyard, and we're going to do just that. We've had them separate. They hatched out their chicks in the main barn because it was cooler, and it's actually warming up even though we're in November. And we're going to move them back out now, but we're not just going to release them into the flock, as it were. What we're going to do is put them in a smaller sort of portable cage top for probably a day, just so that everybody remembers who everybody is. Because one thing we've sort of found is the Silkie hens, at least, seem to be really good at remembering who's in their flock, and it's been amazing sort of reintegrating. We don't seem to find a lot of pecking order squabbles. You can sort of take a hen away for a while, put her back, and typically speaking, if she's from that group, everybody sort of remembers her. And it's sounding kind of wishy-washy, but it does seem to work, and it just makes our lives a lot easier. So this part's a little hard to film because of the tight quarters, but basically I'm just going to move her with her 3 chicks into this cage, and that's as difficult as it gets.
She's ready.
And that's that.
And then everybody can come visit.
So the reason why we're doing this in reverse is because we actually need this crate, because we have some other hens who've basically decided they want to be broody. We're getting really good egg production right now, and it's relatively mild still. So because we do have the big barn, we've got our sort of decently winterized coops, we're going to let them go broody, but we do have to move them out of the main flock. So probably the question some of you might have right now is, why are we moving the hen that wants to sit? And the answer is really, really simple for this. If we leave her in the main sort of flock, nobody bothers her, but they will continue to lay eggs that she will end up sitting on. And the problem with that is we end up with chicks that are all different hatch times, and that doesn't go well. So once we get anywhere from 4 to 8, depending on the size of the hen, depending on how many silkies we want, sort of eggs that she's got, or pretty much no more than 10 eggs, we basically decide, okay, now it's time to sort of remove her from the flock. Now that could be as simple as simply putting the cage top, like you saw, over top of her. She's usually pretty content with that. We've had very few hens ever sort of balk at doing that. But we've also found that, unlike the other chickens, it's really easy to move these hens. When we used to have the bigger birds, we had to wait till nighttime, and we had to do it in the dark, and we basically had to trick them into nesting in a nest box and then move them. And even then, occasionally they wouldn't accept the move. Silkies, we can basically go and pick her off her eggs, move her eggs into the crate, put her in on them, and she might get off them for an hour or so, kind of deciding, but they go back to it really, really well for us. That may vary depending on your own situation, but what we found is once they decide they want to be broody, they're broody. So now we've got to move this hen. She has been very stubbornly broody, and we're going to give her the opportunity to raise some chicks here, but we've got to move her first. So here we go. A little shaky, a little dark, but you can see she's got quite a few eggs under there, and she really wants to sit, so moving her is not going to be problematic. So one thing when you're working with broody hens, just like setting eggs in the incubator, you do want to look at sort of the shape of the eggs and sort of the condition of it. This one here, as you can see, in my mind is a little too pointy. It might hatch just fine, but because silkies don't sit on a lot of eggs at one go, we do take out anything that is either kind of oddly shaped or really dirty, and try to keep them on the best eggs possible. So here's a pretty good example of knowing when a Silkie wants to go broody. This hen, she's not as committed as some of our others, but I just moved her off of a couple of eggs and left them with sort of our more committed hen. As you can see, she hasn't really got up yet. So we'll see if she breaks the broodiness, but at the end of the day, it's not necessarily a negative thing when you're doing this on a small scale. So that's pretty much the gist of this video. We've now, I don't know how many chicks we've actually had born this year. It's been very staggered, and I guess the point of this video is just to show, A, that Silkies really do live up to their reputation as broodies, but I think the part that kind of gets lost in translation is because they're so humanized. They're a breed that really has existed in very close quarters with humans for a very long time. They're really easy to work with. And on a small scale, when you're basically doing this for yourself, to feed your own family, animals that are easy to work with are a huge plus. The second point to this is Silkies are really good at sort of existing in multiple generation or multiple age flocks. You don't typically get the same sort of nasty social interaction that you might get with other birds. I'm not saying that all larger breeds of chickens are that way, but they do. They just love babies. So until they get to sort of maturity level, there's very little issues with having chicks of all different ages in the flock, which makes management a lot easier, at least from our experience of what we used to do in the past. I'm going to say it, homesteading is not easy, and there's lots of parts of homesteading that are more difficult than you'd like them to be. So any little thing that makes life a little easier is a huge plus in our books. So it's a little bit of a teaser, I guess, to future discussions. Right now we have 22 hens that are of laying age and aren't sitting or being broody or have chicks. So we do have more than that. But this morning, in addition to moving some of the hens around, we got 11 eggs from our flock, which I think that's pretty decent. And it kind of illustrates that point too, that the one thing, and this is a really sort of old-timey homesteading or self-sufficiency type thing, that's nice about the Silkies is when they do go broody, you don't have all of your chicks born at the same time. So you constantly have chicks, you're constantly sort of on the meat side of it, butchering small amounts of birds, but you don't have that overwhelming 50, 60, 100 birds to deal with all at once. And having been there, done that, it definitely is nice to not feel sort of overwhelmed throughout the year, and sort of you can almost eat them as you need them, which we have done. So between eggs and the chicks, we have no real shortage of chicken products. So of course, Silkies are not going to be the ideal fit for everyone, but I think the focus here, or the point we're trying to suggest, is a lot of people who are trying to be more self-sufficient or self-reliant, or just minimize their footprint, all of those sort of things, break themselves from sort of normal supply chains, at least in some form or fashion. Silkies are a really good option that I think is often just completely overlooked, because people look at them and go, oh, those are silly birds, and they're kept mostly for show. But they still have a lot of wonderful production qualities. I mean, this video, we're not touching on them all. Stay tuned, because we will touch on things like egg laying and meat production and all those sort of things. We'll come back to that. But hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you have Silkies, maybe you learned a little bit. If you're looking at chicken to add to your homestead or your backyard flock, you know, definitely give them some serious consideration and thought. And if nothing else, hopefully it was enjoyable, and maybe you learned a little bit along the way. So on that note, we're going to get going on some other things, and we will see you all later.